Picture this. You've just met someone who seems absolutely perfect. He tells you you're the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. He calls you his soulmate after just a few dates. He's already planning your future together, talking about growing old with you, meeting your children, and spending every holiday as a couple. The flowers arrive daily. The text messages are constant. The compliments are endless. He says he's never felt this way before, that you're different from everyone else, and that he knew from the moment he saw you that you were the one. It feels like a fairy tale. It feels like the universe finally rewarded you for all those years of heartbreak and disappointment. After everything you've been through, after all the failed relationships and lonely nights, here's someone who truly sees you, who truly values you, who is giving you the love and attention you've always deserved. But here's what you need to know. This might not be the beginning of your happily ever after. This could be the opening act of one of the most painful experiences of your life. What you're experiencing might not be genuine love at all. It could be something far more dangerous, something psychologists call love bombing, and it's one of the most effective manipulation tactics used by narcissists, sociopaths, and emotionally abusive individuals. If you're an older woman who's dating again, whether after divorce, widowhood, or simply after years of being single, you're particularly vulnerable to this tactic, and today we're going to expose exactly how love bombing works, why it's so effective, and most importantly, how you can spot it before it's too late, before you've invested your heart, your time, your energy, and possibly even your financial security into someone who never intended to truly love you at all. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we talk about the real psychology behind relationships, dating, and human behavior, with a special focus on the unique challenges faced by women over 40, 50, and beyond. We don't sugarcoat reality, and we don't pretend that everyone in the dating world has good intentions. What we do is arm you with the knowledge, the awareness, and the tools you need to protect yourself while still remaining open to genuine love. Before we dive deep into today's topic, I need to ask you for a few small favors that make a huge difference to this channel. First, if you find value in this video, please hit that like button. It helps the algorithm show this content to other women who need to hear this message. Second, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, your experiences, or even your questions. I read every single comment, and your engagement helps build a community where women can support each other. Third, share this video with any friends who are dating, especially those who might be vulnerable to manipulation. You could literally save someone from months or even years of heartbreak. Fourth, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss content that could protect you or empower you. And finally, if you really want to support the work we do here, if you believe in the mission of educating and empowering women, consider supporting us with a super thanks. Every bit of support allows us to continue creating this content and reaching more women who need it. Now, let's talk about love bombing, because understanding this manipulation tactic might be one of the most important things you ever learn about dating and relationships. What is love bombing? Love bombing is a manipulation tactic where someone overwhelms you with excessive attention, affection, flattery, and promises in the early stages of a relationship. The term was actually first coined in the 1970s by members of the Unification Church to describe the recruitment tactics they used to draw in new members. They would shower potential recruits with love, attention, and acceptance to create a powerful emotional bond that made it difficult for people to leave. In romantic relationships, love bombing operates on the same psychological principle. The love bomber floods you with so much positive attention, so much validation, and so much apparent devotion that it creates an intense emotional high. This isn't just someone being romantic or enthusiastic about a new relationship. This is a calculated strategy, whether conscious or unconscious, to quickly create a powerful emotional dependency. Here's what makes love bombing so insidious. It exploits some of our deepest psychological needs. As human beings, we crave connection, validation, and love. When someone appears to offer us exactly what we've been longing for, especially after periods of loneliness or after painful past relationships, our brains light up with dopamine and oxytocin. These are the same neurochemicals involved in addiction. The love bomber is essentially getting you addicted to the feeling of being with them, to the validation they provide, and to the fantasy future they're painting. The key distinction between genuine romantic interest and love bombing lies in several factors. First, there's the intensity and speed. Love bombing happens fast and feels overwhelming. Second, there's the lack of respect for boundaries. A love bomber doesn't care if you say you need space or want to take things slowly. They'll push past your boundaries while making it seem romantic. Third, there's the focus on the fantasy rather than reality. Love bombers talk endlessly about the perfect future, but avoid real, substantive conversations about values, goals, and compatibility. Fourth, there's the underlying agenda. Genuine love builds gradually and respects your autonomy. Love bombing seeks to quickly overwhelm your judgment and create dependency. For older women specifically, love bombing can be particularly effective for several reasons. Many women over 40 or 50 have experienced significant losses or disappointments. Perhaps you've been through a painful divorce where your ex-husband made you feel invisible or unappreciated. Perhaps you've been widowed and haven't felt desired in years. Perhaps you've raised children and devoted decades to being a mother, and now you're rediscovering your own identity and desires. Perhaps you've simply been single for a long time and worried that you've missed your chance at love. When someone suddenly appears who makes you feel seen, desired, appreciated, and cherished in ways you haven't felt in years or perhaps ever, it's incredibly seductive. Your logical mind might notice red flags, but your emotional mind is screaming that this is your chance, that this is what you've been waiting for, and that you'd be a fool to question it or walk away. Additionally, older women often bring more to the table than younger women, which makes them attractive targets for certain types of manipulators. You're more likely to own property, have retirement savings, have established careers, and have emotional maturity. Predatory individuals specifically target older women because they represent both emotional and financial opportunities. There's also a generational factor at play. Many women who are currently in their 50s, 60s, and beyond grew up in eras where women were socialized to be accommodating, to not make waves, to prioritize relationships, and to believe that love requires sacrifice. These ingrained patterns can make it harder to recognize manipulation for what it is, and easier to explain away concerning behaviors as signs of passion or devotion. Understanding what love bombing is represents the first crucial step in protecting yourself. But knowledge alone isn't enough. You need to be able to recognize the specific tactics and red flags in real time, which is exactly what we're going to explore in depth. The classic signs of love bombing. Let's get specific about what love bombing actually looks like in practice. These aren't just theoretical concepts. These are real behaviors you can observe and identify if you know what to look for. The first and most obvious sign is excessive and premature declarations of love and commitment. A love bomber will tell you he loves you within days or weeks of meeting you. He'll say you're his soulmate, his twin flame, the answer to his prayers. He'll talk about moving in together, getting married, and spending the rest of your lives together, all before you've even had a chance to really know each other. This isn't romantic spontaneity. This is a deliberate attempt to fast-track intimacy and commitment before you have time to evaluate whether this person is actually right for you. Think about it logically. Love, real love, develops over time as you get to know someone's character, values, habits, and true self. You can have intense attraction, chemistry, and infatuation early on, but genuine love requires seeing someone in different contexts, through different challenges and in different moods. A man who claims to love you after 3 dates doesn't actually know you well enough to love you. What he loves is the idea of you, the fantasy he's created, or more accurately, the fantasy he's trying to get you to buy into. The second sign is overwhelming communication. A love bomber will text you constantly throughout the day, call you multiple times, want to video chat whenever possible, and become anxious or upset if you don't respond immediately. While it's normal for people in new relationships to communicate frequently, love bombing takes this to an extreme that becomes intrusive and controlling. Pay attention to how he reacts when you're not immediately available. Does he respect that you have a life, a job, friends, family, hobbies, and responsibilities? Or does he make you feel guilty for not being constantly accessible? Does he say things like, "I was worried about you," or "I thought maybe you were losing interest," or "I just missed you so much I couldn't focus on anything else"? These statements might sound caring, but they're actually manipulative attempts to make you feel responsible for his emotional state and to ensure you prioritize him above everything else. The third sign is lavish gifts and grand gestures that seem disproportionate to the length and depth of the relationship. A love bomber might send flowers to your workplace daily, buy you expensive jewelry after just a few dates, plan elaborate surprise dates, or make other grand gestures that feel overwhelming rather than simply thoughtful. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with gift-giving or romantic gestures. The problem arises when these gifts serve a specific purpose: to create a sense of obligation, to overwhelm your judgment, and to move faster than you're comfortable with. If you find yourself thinking, "He's spent so much money on me," or "He's done so much for me, I can't possibly end this relationship now," then the gifts are working exactly as intended. They're creating a psychological debt that makes you feel you owe him something. The fourth sign is idealizing you to an unrealistic degree. A love bomber will put you on a pedestal, telling you you're perfect, you're unlike any woman he's ever met, you have no flaws, and you're everything he's ever wanted. This might feel wonderful at first, especially if you've spent years feeling invisible or undervalued. But this idealization is actually deeply problematic for 2 reasons. First, it's not based in reality. No one is perfect, and a partner who truly loves you for who you actually are, including your flaws, quirks, and imperfections. When someone idealizes you, they're not seeing the real you. They're seeing a fantasy version of you that exists only in their mind. This sets up an inevitable crash when reality fails to match the fantasy. Second, idealization is almost always followed by devaluation. This is a classic pattern in narcissistic relationships. The love bomber puts you on a pedestal during the love bombing phase, but once you're hooked, once you've fallen for him and become emotionally dependent, he'll start to tear you down. The same person who told you you were perfect will suddenly find fault with everything you do. The pedestal you were placed on becomes the height from which you'll eventually fall. The fifth sign is pushing for rapid escalation of the relationship. A love bomber wants to meet your children immediately, wants you to meet his family right away, wants to be exclusive after 1 date, wants you to delete your dating profile after you've barely started talking, wants to move in together within weeks, and wants to get engaged within months. He creates a sense of urgency around the relationship, as if you need to commit fully and quickly or risk losing this amazing opportunity. This rapid escalation serves several purposes. It bypasses your natural caution and skepticism. It prevents you from taking the time to truly evaluate whether this person is right for you. It isolates you from other potential partners before you've had a chance to properly vet this one. It creates entanglement before you've seen his true colors. It makes you feel like you're already so invested that walking away would be admitting you made a terrible mistake. The sixth sign is mirroring. A love bomber will seem eerily similar to you. He'll suddenly share all your interests, values, beliefs, and dreams. You love hiking? He's always loved hiking too. You're passionate about art. He's been passionate about art his whole life. You value honesty above all else? Honesty is his #1 value too. You dream of traveling to Italy? He's been dreaming of traveling to Italy forever. This mirroring creates a false sense of compatibility and destiny. You think, wow, we're so similar, we're meant to be together. But here's the reality. He's not showing you who he actually is. He's reflecting back to you what you want to see. He's studied you carefully, listened to what you've said, and is presenting himself as your perfect match. The real him will emerge later, and you might find that you actually have very little in common with the person he truly is. The 7th sign is isolation disguised as devotion. A love bomber will want all of your time and attention. He'll suggest that you don't need to go out with your friends because you have each other. He'll be hurt or upset when you spend time with family. He'll discourage your hobbies or interests if they take you away from him. He'll make comments about your friends being bad influences or not really understanding what you two have. This isolation is crucial to his manipulation. The more isolated you become, the more dependent you are on him for validation, companionship, and emotional support. The more isolated you become, the fewer outside perspectives you have to help you see the relationship clearly. The more isolated you become, the harder it becomes to leave, because he's systematically removed your support system. The 8th sign is inconsistency between words and actions, or more specifically, between the persona he presents and the reality of who he is. A love bomber will talk constantly about how much he values you, respects you, and wants to make you happy, but his actual behavior might tell a different story. He says he respects your need for space, but then shows up at your house uninvited. He says he values your independence, but then criticizes you for spending time on your own interests. He says he wants you to be happy, but then becomes upset when you're happy doing something that doesn't involve him. Pay attention to this gap between words and actions. What people do is always more reliable than what they say. A person's true character is revealed not in their declarations of love, but in how they treat you when you disagree, when you're not available, when you set a boundary, when you're struggling, and when the initial excitement fades. The 9th sign is love bombing following any conflict or whenever you start to pull away. In the cycle of abuse, love bombing isn't just used to hook you initially, it's also used to reel you back in whenever you start to see through the manipulation. If you express concerns about the relationship, suddenly he's back to being the perfect, attentive, devoted partner. If you suggest slowing things down, suddenly you're flooded with gifts, affection, and promises. If you try to leave, suddenly he's devastated and promising to change and reminding you of all the wonderful times you've had together. This intermittent reinforcement, alternating between love bombing and devaluation, between wonderful highs and terrible lows, is actually more addictive than consistent behavior. It keeps you off balance, never quite sure which version of him you're going to get, always hoping to get back to those early magical days, always believing that if you just try hard enough or love him enough, you can return to the person he was when you first met. The 10th sign is a vague or concerning past. Love bombers often have relationship histories that should raise red flags if you're paying attention. Perhaps all his exes are crazy or toxic. Perhaps he's been divorced multiple times. Perhaps he has a pattern of intense, short relationships. Perhaps he's estranged from his children or family. Perhaps he's vague about his past or defensive when you ask questions. Perhaps there are inconsistencies in the stories he tells. A person's past behavior is one of the best predictors of their future behavior. If he has a pattern of idealizing and then devaluing partners, you will likely experience the same pattern. If he speaks with contempt about his exes, he will likely speak with contempt about you once the relationship ends or once you no longer serve his needs. If he takes no responsibility for past relationship failures, he will take no responsibility for problems in your relationship either. These signs, individually, might not necessarily indicate love bombing. An enthusiastic romantic partner might display some of these behaviors in a healthy way. But when you see multiple signs together, when the intensity is overwhelming, when something feels off, even if you can't quite articulate why, trust that feeling. Your intuition is picking up on something your conscious mind might be trying to rationalize away. Why older women are particularly vulnerable. Understanding why older women are especially susceptible to love bombing is crucial, not to place blame, but to increase awareness and self-protection. There are numerous psychological, social, and circumstantial factors that can make women over 40, 50, and beyond more vulnerable to this manipulation tactic. First, there's the scarcity mindset that many older women experience in the dating world. Society constantly sends the message that women have a limited shelf life when it comes to dating and relationships. You're bombarded with narratives about how men prefer younger women, about how it gets harder to find a partner as you age, and about how you're competing with women half your age. This creates a mindset of scarcity, a fear that opportunities are limited and running out. When you operate from a scarcity mindset, you're more likely to overlook red flags, more likely to move faster than you're comfortable with, more likely to accept treatment that doesn't meet your standards, and more likely to cling to any relationship that comes along because you fear it might be your last chance. The love bomber exploits this fear, consciously or unconsciously, by creating a sense of urgency. Don't let this amazing opportunity pass you by. You won't find another man who will love you like I do. Second, there's the impact of past trauma or painful experiences. Many older women carry wounds from previous relationships. Perhaps you spent years in a marriage where you felt invisible, unappreciated, or unloved. Perhaps your ex-husband had an affair, and you've been left with shattered self-esteem and trust issues. Perhaps you've experienced emotional, verbal, or even physical abuse. Perhaps you've been through a painful divorce that left you financially and emotionally devastated. Perhaps you've loved someone deeply, only to lose them to illness or death. These past experiences create vulnerabilities that love bombers can exploit. When someone comes along who seems to offer everything you lacked in your past relationship, your damaged heart wants desperately to believe it's real. When someone makes you feel desired and valued after years of feeling invisible, you're less likely to question whether it's too good to be true. When someone promises to heal your wounds and give you the love you've always deserved, you want to believe them so badly that you might ignore the warning signs your intuition is sending. Third, there's the biological and psychological reality of the stages of life many older women are experiencing. Perhaps you're going through perimenopause or menopause, which can affect mood, self-esteem, and emotional regulation. Perhaps you're experiencing the empty nest syndrome after years of having your identity primarily defined by motherhood. Perhaps you're facing your own mortality more directly and feeling a sense of urgency about experiencing love and companionship before it's too late. Perhaps you're retiring or have recently retired and are facing the prospect of long years ahead with no one to share them with. These transitions can make you more emotionally vulnerable, more eager for connection, and more willing to take risks you might not have taken earlier in life. The love bomber who appears during these vulnerable times can seem like a lifeline, a second chance, a reward for everything you've endured. Fourth, there's the socialization and conditioning many women in older generations received about relationships, gender roles, and self-sacrifice. If you grew up being taught that a woman's value lies in being in a relationship, that you should stand by your man through thick and thin, that love requires sacrifice, that it's selfish to prioritize your own needs, and that good women are patient and understanding, then you're more vulnerable to staying in unhealthy relationships longer than you should. The love bomber counts on this conditioning. When red flags appear, when his behavior becomes concerning, when friends or family express worry, your conditioned response might be to give him the benefit of the doubt, to make excuses for his behavior, to believe that if you just love him enough or try hard enough, things will work out. Your conditioning tells you that questioning the relationship or leaving means you've failed, that you're giving up too easily, that you're being too demanding, or that you're not understanding enough. Fifth, there's the practical reality that older women often have more resources than younger women, which makes them attractive targets for certain types of predators. You're more likely to own a home, have retirement savings, have established credit, have stable employment, have life insurance policies, and have inheritances. For a love bomber who has financial motives in addition to psychological ones, an older woman represents an opportunity not just for narcissistic supply, but also for financial exploitation. The love bomber might seem initially uninterested in your finances and might even insist on paying for everything in the early stages. But once you're hooked, once you're emotionally invested, suddenly there are crises he needs help with. Suddenly he needs to borrow money. Suddenly he's suggesting joint accounts or investments. Suddenly he's moving into your home. Suddenly your name is on loans or credit cards for his benefit. By the time you realize what's happening, you might have lost substantial assets, damaged your credit, or become financially entangled in ways that are difficult to escape. Sixth, there's the isolation that many older women experience. Perhaps your children have moved away or are busy with their own lives. Perhaps friends have moved, gotten sick, or passed away. Perhaps you've retired and no longer have daily social interaction with colleagues. Perhaps you've relocated for retirement or to be closer to family. Perhaps you've lost your social circle after a divorce when mutual friends took sides. Or you found yourself no longer fitting into couple-oriented social groups. This isolation creates a hunger for connection that love bombers can exploit. When you're lonely, when you have fewer social supports, and when you're craving connection and companionship, you're more vulnerable to someone who offers intense connection quickly. You're also less likely to have people around you who can offer objective perspectives on the relationship or notice concerning changes in your behavior or well-being. Seventh, there's the reality that online dating, which is often how older women meet new partners, creates unique vulnerabilities. Behind a screen, people can present carefully curated versions of themselves. They can craft messages that seem perfect, share photos that are outdated or heavily filtered, and make claims about their lives that are exaggerated or completely false. The love bomber can research you through social media, learning your interests, values, and vulnerabilities, and then craft his approach specifically to appeal to you. Online dating also creates a sense of abundance that can actually fuel a scarcity mindset. You see countless profiles and might feel that if you don't respond quickly or enthusiastically to someone who shows interest, you'll lose the opportunity. The love bomber exploits this by moving fast, by overwhelming you with attention before you've had time to properly vet him or consider whether he's actually right for you. Eighth, there's the uncomfortable reality that older women face ageism, both in society and in their own internalized beliefs. Society treats aging women as invisible, as past their prime, and as no longer valuable or desirable. If you've internalized these messages, if part of you believes that your value has diminished with age, then when someone comes along who makes you feel seen, desired, and valued, it's incredibly powerful. It can feel like proof that you still matter, that you're still attractive, that you still have worth. The love bomber knows this and exploits it. His excessive flattery isn't just about making you feel good. It's about making you feel that he's the only one who truly sees you, the only one who appreciates you, and the only one who will ever make you feel this way again. It creates a dependency where you stay in the relationship because you fear losing not just him, but the feeling of being valued that he provides. Ninth, there's often a mismatch between older women's emotional maturity, their dating experience. You might be sophisticated, accomplished, intelligent, and emotionally mature in most areas of your life. But if you've been out of the dating scene for decades, you may not be aware of modern manipulation tactics, of how prevalent narcissistic abuse is, or of how skilled predators have become at identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities. The dating world you're re-entering is very different from the one you left years or decades ago. This inexperience with modern dating makes you more vulnerable to manipulation you don't recognize. You might interpret possessiveness as protectiveness, excessive communication as genuine interest, rapid escalation as passion, and isolation as devotion. You might not recognize the warning signs that someone with more recent dating experience would immediately identify. 10th, there's the biological reality that older women who have been through menopause no longer risk pregnancy, which can make them more willing to become sexually involved more quickly than they might have when they were younger. The love bomber uses sexual intimacy as another tool for creating rapid bonding and dependency. The oxytocin released during sexual activity creates powerful emotional bonding, especially for women. By pushing for sexual intimacy quickly, the love bomber speeds up the attachment process, making you more emotionally invested before you've had time to properly evaluate whether this person is trustworthy. Understanding these vulnerabilities isn't about self-blame or feeling weak. It's about self-awareness and self-protection. Every single one of these vulnerabilities is normal, understandable, and human. Recognizing them allows you to compensate for them, to put safeguards in place, and to be more cautious when you know you're particularly vulnerable. The psychology behind why love bombing works. To truly protect yourself from love bombing, it helps to understand the psychological mechanisms that make it so effective. This isn't just about recognizing behaviors. It's about understanding how these behaviors hijack your brain and emotions. The first psychological mechanism is the dopamine rush. When the love bomber showers you with attention, affection, gifts, and validation, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. This creates a literal high, similar to the high produced by drugs. The constant texts, calls, compliments, and grand gestures keep the dopamine flowing, and you become addicted to the feeling. Here's where it gets particularly insidious. The love bomber doesn't maintain this level of intensity forever. Once you're hooked, the love bombing decreases or becomes intermittent. This actually strengthens the addiction through a psychological principle called intermittent reinforcement. Studies show that intermittent rewards are more addictive than consistent rewards. When you don't know when the next hit of validation or affection is coming, when you experience periods of withdrawal, you become even more focused on getting that dopamine rush back. You start working harder for his approval, accepting less, and staying in the relationship far longer than you would if you could think clearly. The second mechanism is oxytocin bonding. Oxytocin is often called the love hormone or bonding hormone. It's released during physical touch, sexual activity, and emotionally intimate moments. The love bomber creates situations that maximize oxytocin release: constant physical affection, rapid sexual escalation, intense emotional conversations, and vulnerability sharing. This creates a powerful biochemical bond that makes you feel deeply attached to him, even though logically you might recognize that you don't actually know him very well. Women generally produce more oxytocin than men and tend to bond more deeply through oxytocin release, which is why love bombing can be particularly effective on women. Once you're oxytocin bonded to someone, your brain literally fights against logic and evidence when trying to evaluate the relationship. You feel bonded, so you believe the relationship must be real and good, even when evidence suggests otherwise. The third mechanism is cognitive dissonance. This is the psychological discomfort you feel when you hold contradictory beliefs or when your beliefs don't match your actions. Once you've fallen for the love bomber, once you've declared your love, once you've introduced him to friends and family, once you've become sexually intimate, and once you've started planning a future together, you've made a substantial emotional investment. When red flags start appearing, when his behavior doesn't match his words, And when friends express concerns, you experience cognitive dissonance. Part of you recognizes something is wrong, but admitting that means admitting you made a terrible mistake, that your judgment was impaired, and that all the emotional investment was wasted. Your brain works hard to resolve this dissonance, often by minimizing or denying the red flags rather than by ending the relationship. You tell yourself things like, "He's under a lot of stress. I'm being too critical. Relationships take work. Everyone has flaws. He just loves me so much, he gets a little intense. I've been hurt before, so I'm just being overly cautious." The fourth mechanism is the sunken cost fallacy. This is the tendency to continue investing in something because you've already invested so much, even when continuing is not in your best interest. The love bomber creates rapid investment, emotional intimacy, time spent together, meeting important people in each other's lives, future plans, possibly financial entanglement, and possibly moving in together. The more you invest, the harder it becomes to walk away. You think about everything you've already put into the relationship. You think about having to start over. You think about the embarrassment of admitting it didn't work out after you were so sure he was the one. You think about being alone again. So you stay and continue investing, even as the relationship becomes more painful, hoping that if you just invest a little more, it will finally pay off. The fifth mechanism is trauma bonding. This is a powerful psychological attachment that forms between an abuser and victim through cycles of abuse, followed by positive reinforcement. The love bombing phase itself creates the foundation for trauma bonding by establishing an incredibly high emotional baseline. Then, when the inevitable devaluation phase begins, you're desperate to get back to those early days. When he occasionally reverts back to love-bombing behavior after periods of criticism, neglect, or abuse, it creates an intense relief and gratitude that strengthens the bond. Trauma bonding can actually create a stronger attachment than healthy bonding because of the intensity of the emotional highs and lows. You become addicted not just to the highs, but to the relief of escaping the lows. You become hypervigilant to his moods and needs, constantly working to avoid the bad times and bring back the good times. This is why victims of narcissistic abuse often describe feeling more attached to their abusers than they felt in healthy relationships. It's not because the love was deeper, it's because the trauma bond was stronger. The sixth mechanism is identity disruption. The love bomber doesn't just create emotional dependency, he systematically disrupts your sense of self. Through the idealization phase, he creates a version of you that exists only in the context of the relationship, a you that is perfect, special, and worthy, but only as validated by him. Through isolation, he removes other sources of identity validation. Through intermittent reinforcement, he becomes the primary or sole source of whether you feel good or bad about yourself. Over time, your identity becomes intertwined with his perception of you and with the relationship itself. Leaving means not just losing him, but losing the version of yourself that exists with him, losing your sense of being special and worthy, and losing what feels like a core part of your identity. This identity disruption is one reason why victims of narcissistic abuse often describe feeling lost, empty, or unsure of who they are after the relationship ends. The seventh mechanism is manufactured dependency. The love bomber doesn't want a partner, he wants someone who depends on him. He achieves this through several tactics. He becomes your primary or sole source of validation and self-esteem. He isolates you from other support systems. He inserts himself into every area of your life. He makes decisions for you, initially framing it as being helpful or taking care of you. He offers to handle things you used to handle yourself. He criticizes your judgment or decision-making until you start doubting yourself and relying on his opinions. Slowly, subtly, you become dependent on him for things you used to do independently. This dependency makes leaving feel impossible. You've forgotten how to trust your own judgment. You're not sure if you can handle life without him. You've lost touch with friends and family who could support you. You doubt your ability to attract anyone else. The very idea of being alone feels terrifying rather than liberating. The eighth mechanism is the fantasy bond. The love bomber doesn't build a real relationship based on genuine intimacy, authentic connection, and true mutual understanding. Instead, he creates what psychologists call a fantasy bond, an illusion of connection that substitutes for real love. The fantasy bond is based on words rather than actions, on promises rather than reality, and on who he presents himself to be rather than who he actually is. The power of the fantasy bond lies in its perfection. In the fantasy, he's everything you've ever wanted. In the fantasy, the relationship meets all your needs. In the fantasy, you have the deep soul connection you've always dreamed of. Reality doesn't have to match the fantasy because you're so invested in the fantasy that you actively maintain it despite evidence to the contrary. You focus on the potential of what the relationship could be rather than the reality of what it actually is. The ninth mechanism is strategic vulnerability. Love bombers are often skilled at presenting themselves as wounded souls who just need the right woman to heal them. They share painful stories from their past, perhaps real or perhaps fabricated or exaggerated. They cry. They talk about their insecurities. They make you feel like you're the only one who truly understands them, the only one who sees past their walls to the real person underneath. This strategic vulnerability serves several purposes. It creates a sense of special intimacy very quickly. It triggers your nurturing and caretaking instincts. It creates a sense of being needed, which many women find deeply compelling. It also provides preemptive excuses for bad behavior that will come later. When he eventually becomes critical, controlling, or abusive, you'll remember his wounded past and make excuses for him. When he pulls away or devalues you, you'll think he's just protecting his heart because he's been hurt before. And if you just prove your love and loyalty, he'll finally feel safe enough to fully open up again. The 10th mechanism is the contrast effect. The love bomber often appears during or shortly after a period of loneliness, pain, or struggle in your life. Perhaps you've just finalized a difficult divorce. Perhaps you've been dealing with health issues. Perhaps you've been caring for an aging parent. Perhaps you've just been feeling lonely and invisible. Into this dark period comes someone who seems to bring light, joy, hope, and excitement. The contrast between how you felt before you met him and how you feel with him makes the relationship seem even more special and significant than it actually is. The relief of not being lonely, the joy of feeling desired, and the excitement of a new relationship all feel amplified because of the contrast with your previous state. This makes you more likely to overlook red flags and more reluctant to risk returning to the painful state you were in before he appeared. Understanding these psychological mechanisms is empowering. It helps you recognize that falling for love bombing doesn't mean you're weak, stupid, or broken. It means you're human, with a human brain that's wired to respond to certain stimuli in predictable ways. The love bomber, whether consciously or unconsciously, exploits normal human psychological needs and responses. Awareness of these mechanisms allows you to recognize when they're being activated and to step back and evaluate the situation more objectively. The difference between love bombing and genuine romantic interest. One of the most challenging aspects of identifying love bombing is distinguishing it from genuine romantic interest and enthusiasm. After all, when someone truly likes you, they want to spend time with you, they think about you often, they're excited to get to know you, and they express affection and admiration. So how do you tell the difference between a manipulative love bomber and someone who's genuinely falling for you? The first key difference lies in respect for boundaries and pacing. Someone who genuinely cares about you respects your boundaries, your need for space, your desire to take things slowly, your other commitments, and your relationships. They might be disappointed if you can't see them as often as they'd like, but they understand and respect your needs. They don't make you feel guilty, manipulated, or pressured. A love bomber, on the other hand, pushes past boundaries constantly. He'll show up uninvited. He'll call repeatedly if you don't answer. He'll express hurt or anger if you spend time with friends instead of him. He'll pressure you to progress the relationship faster than you're comfortable with. He'll make you feel like your boundaries are obstacles rather than reasonable needs. Test this difference deliberately. Set a boundary. Say you need space. Say you want to take things slowly. Say you're not ready for a certain level of commitment or intimacy. A genuine partner will respect this, even if they're disappointed. A love bomber will react negatively, either with hurt, anger, or guilt-tripping, or by temporarily acquiescing only to push the boundary again soon after. The second difference lies in interest in you as a real person versus you as an idealized fantasy. Someone who genuinely cares about you wants to know the real you. Your flaws, your struggles, your ordinary moments, your complex feelings, your real history, and your actual opinions, even when they differ from his own. They ask substantive questions about your life, your experiences, and your thoughts. They remember details you've shared. They're interested in understanding you as a full, complex human being. A love bomber is interested in you as he wants you to be, not as you actually are. He tells you who you are, rather than asking. He idealizes you in ways that don't match reality. He's not actually curious about your inner life. Conversations stay surface level or focus on the relationship itself, rather than on understanding you as an individual. If you share something that doesn't fit his idealized version of you, he dismisses it, doesn't remember it, or becomes upset. Pay attention to whether he truly listens when you talk, or whether conversations always circle back to him, the relationship, or his vision of your future together. Notice whether he remembers the small details you've shared, or whether he only remembers information that fits his narrative. The third difference lies in consistency versus performative behavior. Genuine interest manifests consistently across different contexts, moods, and situations. Someone who truly cares about you doesn't just show it when you're alone together or when everything is going well. They show it when they're stressed, when they're tired, when you're not at your best, or when there's no reward or recognition for their kindness. Love bombing, on the other hand, often feels performative. It's intense and over the top during certain times, particularly early on or when he's trying to win you back after conflict. But it doesn't show up in the small, consistent ways that characterize genuine care. Notice whether his grand gestures are matched by simple, consistent kindness in everyday moments. Notice whether he's loving when you're alone but dismissive or critical in front of others. Notice whether his behavior changes dramatically based on whether he's getting what he wants from you. The fourth difference lies in reciprocity and mutuality. A healthy relationship, even in the early stages, has a sense of reciprocity. Both people give, both people receive, both people make adjustments, and both people show interest and care. There's a back and forth, a balance, even if not perfectly equal at all times. Love bombing lacks this reciprocity. The love bomber presents himself as the giver, overwhelming you with his generosity, affection, and devotion. But look closer. Is he actually interested in what you give, or is he more focused on making sure you see how much he's giving? Is he comfortable with you doing things for him, or does he insist on being the one in control of giving? Does he listen when you express needs, or does he override your needs with what he thinks you should want? True reciprocity also means that both people have agency in the relationship. Both people influence how the relationship develops. Both people's needs matter equally. In love bombing, the relationship moves in the direction the love bomber wants, at the pace he wants, toward the goals he wants. Your role is to receive his love and follow his lead, not to be an equal partner in creating something together. The fifth difference lies in how disagreement and conflict are handled. In a healthy relationship, disagreements happen, and they're handled with respect, genuine listening, willingness to compromise, and care for the other person's feelings. Someone who genuinely cares about you can disagree with you without making you feel attacked, dismissed, or manipulated. They can hear your concerns without becoming defensive or turning it around on you. A love bomber reacts very differently to disagreement or conflict. In the early stages, he might avoid conflict entirely, agreeing with everything you say, which can seem pleasant, but actually prevents you from seeing how he handles differences. When conflict does arise, he might use manipulation tactics, guilt-tripping, playing the victim, turning your concerns back on you, threatening to leave, or suddenly reverting to intense love bombing to avoid addressing the issue. Pay attention to what happens when you express a concern, disagree with him, or confront him about something problematic. Does he listen and take responsibility? Does he become defensive and attack you? Does he deflect and change the subject? Does he shower you with affection to distract from the problem? His response to conflict tells you more about his true character than his behavior when everything is going well. The sixth difference lies in integration with the rest of your life versus isolation. Someone who genuinely cares about you wants to become part of your life, not replace your life. They're interested in meeting your friends and family, but they don't insist on it immediately or try to monopolize your time with them when they do meet. They support your relationships with others, your hobbies, your work, and your personal growth. They understand that you're a whole person with a life that existed before them and will continue alongside them. A love bomber seeks to isolate you, even when it's disguised as devotion. He wants you all to himself. He's jealous of time you spend with others. He makes subtle or overt criticisms of your friends and family. He monopolizes your time. He makes you feel guilty for engaging in activities that don't include him. He wants to be the center of your world, not a part of your rich, full life. Monitor this carefully. Are you seeing friends and family as much as before, or has it decreased significantly since you started dating him? Do you feel excited to introduce him to important people in your life, or do you feel anxious about it? Do your friends and family express concerns about him or about changes they see in you? Are you maintaining your hobbies and interests, or have they fallen by the wayside? The seventh difference lies in patience versus urgency. Genuine love can afford to be patient because it's based on a real connection that will only deepen over time. Someone who truly cares about you is willing to wait for you to be ready for various steps in the relationship. They understand that trust is built gradually, that real intimacy develops over time, and that lasting commitment requires knowing each other in multiple contexts and situations. Love bombing is characterized by urgency. Everything needs to happen now. We need to be exclusive now. We need to say, "I love you" now. We need to move in together now. We need to get married now. The love bomber creates this urgency because his manipulation is most effective when you don't have time to think, evaluate, or listen to concerns from others. The urgency is designed to sweep you off your feet before you can plant them firmly on the ground. When someone is pushing for rapid escalation, ask yourself, why? Why does this need to happen so quickly? Why can't we take our time? What are we afraid of losing by going slower? A genuine partner will understand that taking time strengthens the relationship by building a solid foundation. A love bomber will resist slowing down because time is his enemy. The eighth difference lies in how you feel about yourself. This is perhaps one of the most important distinctions. Genuine love makes you feel more authentically yourself. It increases your confidence, your sense of self-worth, your joy, and your energy. You feel free to be who you truly are, including your flaws and imperfections. You feel like the best version of yourself, not because you're performing or trying to please, but because you're accepted and cherished for who you actually are. Love bombing creates a more complicated and ultimately destructive effect on your sense of self. Initially, the idealization might make you feel amazing, like you've finally found someone who sees your true value, but pay attention to whether this feeling is stable or whether it depends entirely on his validation. Notice whether you're changing yourself to match his idealization of you, suppressing aspects of yourself that don't fit the image he's created. Notice whether you're becoming more anxious, more hypervigilant to his moods and reactions, and more focused on maintaining his approval. Over time, love bombing, followed by the inevitable devaluation phase, erodes your sense of self rather than strengthening it. You become less confident, more doubtful of your own judgment, and more dependent on his perception of you. This erosion of self is one of the most damaging effects of narcissistic relationships. The ninth difference lies in transparency versus secrecy or vagueness. Someone with genuine intentions is relatively transparent about their life, their past, their current circumstances, their values, and their goals. They might not share everything immediately, but what they share is honest and consistent. They're willing to answer reasonable questions. They don't get defensive or evasive when you want to know more about them. Love bombers often maintain areas of secrecy or vagueness. Their stories might be inconsistent. They might be evasive about their past relationships, their financial situation, their family, their living situation, and their daily activities. They might present themselves as mysterious or claim that their past is too painful to discuss. They might turn questions back on you or deflect. They might tell you that asking questions shows you don't trust them or that you're being insecure. Trust your instinct when something feels off. If his stories don't quite add up, if he's vague about important aspects of his life, if you feel like you're not getting straight answers, these are red flags. A genuine partner has nothing to hide and is willing to be known. The 10th difference lies in how they talk about past relationships. Someone with healthy relationship patterns takes some responsibility for past relationship failures, can speak about exes with a degree of respect, or at least neutrality, and has learned from past experiences. They might acknowledge their own role in why relationships didn't work out. They can identify patterns they're working to change. Love bombers often describe all their exes in entirely negative terms. Everyone else was crazy, toxic, abusive, or at fault. He takes no responsibility for relationship failures. He positions himself as the victim in every past relationship. This should be a major red flag because it indicates both a lack of self-awareness and an unwillingness to take accountability. More importantly, it predicts how he'll speak about you once the relationship ends or once you're no longer serving his needs. Learning to distinguish between love bombing and genuine romantic interest requires practice, self-awareness, and willingness to prioritize your long-term well-being over short-term excitement. It requires slowing down when every instinct might be telling you to rush forward. It requires maintaining your boundaries even when you're tempted to abandon them. It requires listening to your rational mind even when your emotions are overwhelming. But this discernment is one of the most valuable skills you can develop for protecting yourself in the dating world. What happens after the love bombing phase? Understanding what happens after the love bombing phase ends is crucial because it helps you recognize that the manipulation isn't just about the intense beginning. The love bombing is just the first stage of a predictable cycle that characterizes narcissistic and abusive relationships. After the love bombing phase, once you're sufficiently hooked, once you've fallen in love, once you've made significant investments in the relationship, and once you're emotionally dependent on him for validation and happiness, the love bomber transitions into what's called the devaluation phase. This shift can be gradual or sudden, but it's almost always devastating because it's so unexpected and contradicts everything that came before. During the devaluation phase, the same person who put you on a pedestal now begins to tear you down. The man who said you were perfect now finds fault with everything about you. The man who couldn't get enough of you now seems irritated by your presence. The man who showered you with affection now withholds it, using his approval as a tool for control. The man who made grand promises now dismisses your expectations as unreasonable. The criticism starts slowly and subtly. He makes a comment about your appearance, framed as helpful advice. He jokes about something you do in a way that feels slightly mean. He sighs with exasperation when you express a need or feeling. He compares you unfavorably to other women, to his exes, or to an idealized version of who you should be. He points out your flaws, your mistakes, and your inadequacies. As time goes on, the criticism becomes more frequent and more harsh. Nothing you do is right. You're too sensitive when you're hurt by his comments. You're too demanding when you express needs. You're not attractive enough, not smart enough, not interesting enough, not sexy enough, not successful enough, not supportive enough. Every aspect of who you are comes under attack. This devaluation serves several purposes for the narcissistic love bomber. First, it's a natural consequence of the fact that you were never a real person to him. You were a fantasy, and now that the initial excitement has worn off and reality has set in, he's disappointed that you're not the perfect fantasy he created in his mind. Second, it establishes control. By undermining your self-esteem, he makes you more dependent on him and more desperate to win back his approval. Third, it punishes you for being a real person with needs, feelings, boundaries, and imperfections, rather than the idealized fantasy he wanted. Alongside the devaluation, you'll often experience what's called intermittent reinforcement. The love bomber doesn't completely withdraw all affection and validation. Occasionally, he'll revert back to love-bombing behavior, giving you glimpses of the man you fell in love with. These moments of warmth and affection become incredibly powerful because of their scarcity. You cling to them as proof that the real him is still in there, that the relationship can be saved, that if you just try hard enough, you can bring back the good times permanently. This intermittent reinforcement is actually more addictive than consistent behavior. It's the same psychological principle that makes gambling addictive. You never know when the next reward is coming, so you keep trying, keep hoping, keep investing. Each time he's briefly kind or affectionate after a period of coldness or criticism, you feel intense relief and gratitude. Your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing your attachment to him despite how much pain he's causing. During this phase, you'll likely experience gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation where the abuser makes you question your own perception, memory, and sanity. He'll deny saying things he clearly said. He'll tell you you're remembering things wrong. He'll insist that events didn't happen the way you know they did. He'll accuse you of being too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, and too crazy. He'll rewrite history, claiming the relationship was never as good as you remember, or that you've always had problems he's been patiently tolerating. Gaslighting is deeply destabilizing because it attacks your ability to trust your own mind. You start doubting yourself constantly. Did he really say that? Am I remembering correctly? Am I overreacting? Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I am the problem. This self-doubt makes you even more dependent on him for validation and less likely to trust your own judgment about whether the relationship is healthy. You'll also likely experience isolation during this phase. Early on, his desire to spend all his time with you seemed romantic. Now you realize you've lost touch with friends and family. When you do see them, they might express concerns about the relationship or about changes they see in you, but you defend him, make excuses, or avoid seeing them altogether because you don't want to hear their concerns. The isolation serves the love bomber perfectly. The more isolated you are, the fewer reality checks you have. The more isolated you are, the more dependent you are on him for social connection and validation. The more isolated you are, the harder it becomes to leave because you've lost your support system and you're not sure who would be there for you if you did leave. Another common experience during the devaluation phase is called blame shifting. No matter what the problem is in the relationship, no matter what he's done wrong, he'll find a way to make it your fault. He cheated? It's because you weren't meeting his needs. He lied? It's because you made him feel like he couldn't be honest. He's critical? It's because you need to hear hard truths for your own good. He's distant? It's because you're too clingy. This blame shifting serves to absolve him of all responsibility while making you feel like you're the problem. If only you were better, if only you changed, if only you tried harder, the relationship would be good again. So you keep trying, keep changing, keep sacrificing yourself, and become more and more lost in the process. Many victims of narcissistic abuse during this phase describe feeling like they're constantly walking on eggshells, never knowing what will trigger his anger, criticism, or withdrawal. You become hypervigilant to his moods, constantly trying to anticipate his needs, adjust your behavior to avoid his displeasure, prove your love and loyalty, and earn back his approval and affection. This hypervigilance is exhausting and anxiety-inducing. You're in a constant state of stress, never able to relax and be yourself. The relationship that initially made you feel joyful and alive now makes you feel anxious, depleted, and emotionally exhausted. After the devaluation phase, many narcissistic relationships enter what's called the discard phase, though this doesn't always happen in clear stages and can cycle repeatedly. The discard is when the love bomber suddenly exits the relationship with shocking cruelty and coldness. The man who once claimed you were his soulmate now seems completely indifferent to you and the relationship. The discard can take various forms. He might suddenly ghost you, disappearing without explanation. He might brutally end the relationship with no warning and no willingness to discuss or work on things. He might immediately move on to someone else and flaunt the new relationship publicly. He might simply become so distant, cold, and uninvested that the relationship effectively ends, even if no official breakup occurs. The discard is devastating because it contradicts everything he told you about how much he loved you, how special you were, and how connected you were. The speed and coldness of it make you feel discarded, worthless, and utterly confused. You desperately search for explanations, blaming yourself, wondering what you did wrong, trying to understand how someone who loved you so intensely could suddenly treat you like you mean nothing. Many love bombers, after the discard, will eventually attempt what's called hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner brand, because they're trying to suck you back in. Just when you're starting to heal, starting to move on, and starting to regain your sense of self, he reappears. He might apologize profusely, claim he's changed, and promise things will be different. He might return to love bombing, showering you with the affection and attention you've been craving. He might play on your compassion, presenting himself as broken and in need of your help. If you take him back, the cycle begins again: love bombing, devaluation, and discard. Each cycle often gets shorter and more intense. Each cycle does more damage to your sense of self, your ability to trust your own judgment, your emotional and sometimes physical health, your relationships with others, and possibly your financial security. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it helps you recognize that the magical, perfect early period was not the real relationship, it was manipulation. The real relationship is the cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. The wonderful man you fell in love with was a mask, a performance designed to hook you. Once you're hooked, he doesn't need to maintain the performance, and you see his true character. This knowledge can be painful, but it's also empowering. It helps you understand that you didn't do anything to cause the change in his behavior. You didn't fail, you didn't mess up, and you weren't inadequate. He was never the person he pretended to be. The change wasn't about you. It was always about his manipulation and his psychological issues. Recognizing this pattern also helps you resist hoovering attempts. When he comes back with apologies and promises, You can recognize it as just another phase of the cycle. When he love bombs you again, you can see it as manipulation rather than proof of his genuine feelings. This knowledge makes it easier to maintain no contact and resist being pulled back into the cycle. How to protect yourself now that you understand what love bombing is, how to recognize it, why it's effective, and what happens after the love bombing phase ends. Let's focus on practical strategies for protecting yourself. Knowledge is power, but only when applied. The first and most important protection strategy is to deliberately slow down the pace of new relationships. This is difficult because the excitement, chemistry, and intensity of a new connection can make you want to rush forward. But rushing is the love bomber's ally and your enemy. Time is your friend. Time reveals character. Time exposes inconsistencies. Time allows the initial performance to crack and the real person to emerge. Set deliberate boundaries around pacing. Don't agree to exclusivity in the first few dates. Don't say, "I love you," until you've known someone for months, not weeks. Don't introduce him to your children, family, or close friends immediately. Don't agree to move in together, combine finances, or make major commitments until you've known someone long enough to see them in multiple contexts, seasons, moods, and situations. If he pushes back against slow pacing, if he makes you feel like you're being overly cautious or withholding, if he interprets your boundaries as a lack of interest or affection, these are red flags. A healthy partner will respect your need to take things slowly. A manipulator will pressure you to rush. The second protection strategy is to maintain your independence and your life outside the relationship. Don't let a new relationship become your entire world, no matter how wonderful it feels. Continue seeing your friends regularly. Maintain your hobbies and interests. Keep up with your exercise routine, your spiritual practices, and your community involvements. Don't abandon the life you've built for a relationship that hasn't proven itself yet. This independence serves multiple purposes. It prevents the isolation that makes you vulnerable to manipulation. It provides you with perspectives from people who care about you and can offer objective observations about the relationship. It maintains your sense of identity separate from the relationship. It ensures that you have a life to return to if the relationship ends. It also serves as a test. A healthy partner supports your independence, while a love bomber resists it. The third protection strategy is to pay attention to actions rather than words. Love bombers are skilled at saying exactly what you want to hear. But talk is cheap. What matters is what someone does, how they treat you when you're not at your best, how they handle conflict, whether they follow through on promises, and whether their behavior is consistent with their words. Make it a practice to observe discrepancies between words and actions. If he says he respects you but doesn't respect your boundaries, believe his actions. If he says he values honesty but you catch him in lies, believe his actions. If he promises to change but his behavior remains the same, believe his actions. People can control their words much more easily than they can control their patterns of behavior. The fourth protection strategy is to trust your intuition. Many victims of love bombing later say they had gut feelings that something was off early on, but they ignored those feelings because everything seemed so perfect on the surface. Your intuition is your unconscious mind processing information and patterns your conscious mind might not have fully articulated yet. When something feels off, when you have a nagging sense of unease, when alarm bells are ringing even quietly in the back of your mind, pay attention. Don't let him talk you out of your intuition by calling you paranoid, insecure, damaged from past relationships, or too cautious. Don't let your desire for the relationship to work override your inner warning system. Your intuition developed over a lifetime of experience, and it's designed to protect you. Honor it. The fifth protection strategy is to watch how he treats others and how he speaks about others, particularly past partners. Someone's character is revealed not just in how they treat you when they're trying to impress you, but in how they treat waitstaff, service workers, people who can't do anything for them, people they're angry with, and people they have power over. Pay particular attention to how he speaks about his exes. Does he take any responsibility for past relationship failures? Can he speak about exes with some degree of respect or at least neutrality? Or are all his exes crazy, toxic, and abusive? Does he position himself as the perpetual victim? This pattern predicts how he'll eventually speak about you and indicates a lack of self-awareness and accountability that will inevitably affect your relationship. The sixth protection strategy is to maintain your financial independence and security. Never combine finances, co-sign loans, make joint purchases, or otherwise become financially entangled with someone you haven't known for a substantial period of time. Be extremely cautious about lending money or providing financial support, no matter what sob story you're told. Many love bombers have financial motives alongside psychological ones. They target women with assets and gradually work their way into financial dependency or exploitation. Protect your financial security fiercely. A genuine partner will respect your need to maintain financial independence, especially in the early stages of a relationship. A predator will push for financial entanglement or access. The seventh protection strategy is to continue investing in your own growth, therapy, and self-awareness. If you have a history of choosing emotionally unavailable or manipulative partners, work with a therapist to understand these patterns and develop healthier relationship choices. If you struggle with low self-esteem, people-pleasing, or difficulty setting boundaries, these are areas to work on because they're vulnerabilities that manipulators exploit. Therapy, support groups, self-help books, and personal development work aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of strength and self-care. The more you understand yourself, your patterns, your vulnerabilities, and your worth, the better protected you are against manipulation. The eighth protection strategy is to listen to friends and family. When people who love you and have known you for years express concerns about your new relationship or about changes they see in you, take those concerns seriously. They have an outside perspective that you don't have when you're caught up in the intensity of a new relationship. Yes, sometimes friends and family can be wrong or overly protective, but more often they see red flags you're missing because you're too close to the situation or too emotionally invested. At minimum, don't dismiss their concerns outright. Consider them carefully. Ask yourself if there's any truth to what they're saying. The ninth protection strategy is to educate yourself about manipulation tactics, narcissistic abuse, and healthy relationship dynamics. You can't protect yourself from something if you don't know it exists or can't recognize it. Read books, listen to podcasts, and watch videos from reputable experts in psychology and relationship dynamics. The more you know about how manipulation works, the easier it is to spot it in real time. The more you understand about what healthy relationships look like, the easier it is to recognize when what you're experiencing falls short of healthy. Education is one of your most powerful protections. The 10th protection strategy is to be willing to walk away. This might be the most important strategy of all. All the knowledge, all the awareness, and all the red flag recognition mean nothing if you're not willing to act on what you know. You must be willing to end a relationship when you recognize it's unhealthy, even if you've already invested time and emotion, even if you'll be alone again, even if it means admitting you made a mistake, even if it means facing the pain of loss. Walking away from love bombing and narcissistic manipulation is hard because of all the psychological mechanisms we discussed earlier: the dopamine addiction, the oxytocin bonding, the trauma bonding, the cognitive dissonance, and the sunken cost fallacy. Your brain and your emotions will fight against the logical decision to leave. You'll make excuses, minimize red flags, focus on potential rather than reality, and hope that things will improve. But staying in a relationship with someone who's manipulating you will only cause more damage over time. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. The longer you stay, the more your sense of self erodes. The longer you stay, the more you lose. Being willing to walk away, even when it's painful, is an act of self-love and self-respect. Recovering from love bombing. If you're reading this and recognizing that you've been the victim of love bombing, if you're in the devaluation phase or have recently experienced a discard, or if you're trying to heal from a past narcissistic relationship, you need to understand that recovery is possible, but it requires deliberate effort and self-compassion. The first thing to understand about recovery is that what you experienced was real trauma. This wasn't just a breakup. This wasn't just a relationship that didn't work out. You experienced psychological manipulation designed to exploit your vulnerabilities, create dependency, undermine your sense of self, and cause emotional harm. This trauma needs to be acknowledged and treated as trauma, not minimized as simply a bad relationship. Many victims of narcissistic abuse develop symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress disorder: intrusive thoughts about the relationship, hypervigilance, anxiety, emotional numbness, difficulty trusting, nightmares, flashbacks to painful moments, and fear of future relationships. These symptoms are not signs of weakness. They're normal responses to abnormal treatment. Recognizing that you've experienced trauma validates your pain and helps you seek appropriate support. The second crucial element of recovery is establishing and maintaining no contact with the love bomber. This is difficult, but essential. Narcissists are skilled at manipulation, and as long as you're in contact with them, they can continue to manipulate you, pull you back in, undermine your healing, and cause additional harm. No contact means no phone calls, no texts, no emails, no social media interaction, no checking their profiles, no contact through mutual friends, nothing. If you have children together or must maintain some contact for other legitimate reasons, establish strict boundaries around that contact. Keep it minimal, factual, and focused solely on necessary business. Don't engage emotionally. Don't respond to manipulation attempts. Consider communicating only through a designated app or email, and only about the specific issues that require coordination. The no-contact rule is challenging because your brain is literally addicted to the person. You'll experience withdrawal symptoms similar to drug withdrawal, intense cravings to reach out, obsessive thoughts about them, checking to see if they've tried to contact you, hope that they'll reach out, anxiety, and emptiness. These cravings will gradually decrease over time if you maintain no contact, but any contact resets the addiction. The third element of recovery is to seek professional support. A therapist who specializes in narcissistic abuse, trauma, or complex PTSD can provide invaluable help in processing what happened, understanding how the manipulation worked, identifying patterns that made you vulnerable, developing healthier relationship patterns, rebuilding your sense of self, and healing from the trauma. Support groups, whether in person or online, can also be incredibly healing. Connecting with others who have had similar experiences helps you feel less alone, less crazy, and less broken. Hearing other people's stories helps you recognize patterns in your own experience. Learning how others have healed gives you hope and strategies for your own recovery. Be cautious about who you share your experience with. Not everyone will understand narcissistic abuse. Some people might minimize what you went through, tell you to just get over it, question why you stayed, or give unhelpful advice. Share selectively with people who are capable of offering compassionate, non-judgmental support. The fourth element of recovery is to allow yourself to grieve. You're grieving multiple losses: the loss of the relationship, the loss of the fantasy future you imagined, the loss of the person you thought he was, the loss of time and emotional energy invested, possibly financial losses, the loss of innocence and trust, and the loss of the version of yourself that existed before the abuse. Grief isn't linear. You'll experience denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, often cycling through these stages multiple times. Allow yourself to feel your feelings without judgment. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss him even knowing he was bad for you. It's okay to have moments of doubt where you wonder if you made a mistake by leaving. All of these feelings are normal parts of grief. What's important is that you don't let grief pull you back into contact with him. Feel your feelings, process them with support, but don't act on them by reaching out. Remember that what you're grieving is largely fantasy. You're grieving who you thought he was, not who he actually is. The fifth element of recovery is to resist the urge to seek closure from him. One of the most common desires after a narcissistic relationship ends is to have a conversation where he finally understands the pain he caused, takes responsibility, apologizes sincerely, or at least acknowledges the reality of what happened. You want answers. You want to understand why. You want him to see you, really see you, and feel remorse. This desire for closure from him is understandable, but will only cause more pain. Narcissists and love bombers are incapable of providing genuine closure. They won't take responsibility. They won't acknowledge the harm they caused. They won't offer sincere apologies. Any attempt to get closure from them will likely result in more manipulation, more gaslighting, more pain, or being pulled back into the relationship. Closure must come from within. It comes from understanding what happened, accepting reality, processing your feelings, forgiving yourself, learning from the experience, and making a conscious decision to move forward. This internal closure is the only closure that's truly possible, and it's actually more healing than anything he could say or do. The sixth element of recovery is to rebuild your sense of self. Narcissistic relationships systematically undermine your identity, your confidence, your trust in your own judgment, and your sense of worth. Recovery requires deliberately rebuilding these things. Start by reconnecting with who you were before the relationship. What interests did you abandon? What friendships did you neglect? What activities brought you joy? What values defined you? Revisit these aspects of yourself. Reconnect with old friends. Return to abandoned hobbies. Remember who you are outside of relationships. Develop a practice of self-compassion. Stop blaming yourself for falling for the manipulation. Stop criticizing yourself for not leaving sooner. Stop judging yourself for missing him, despite knowing he was bad for you. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend in the same situation. Rebuild trust in your own judgment gradually. Start with small decisions and notice that you're capable of making good choices. Notice when your intuition is right. Celebrate moments where you set boundaries or recognize red flags. Your judgment wasn't flawed. You were deliberately manipulated by someone skilled at manipulation. As you heal and learn, your ability to trust yourself will return stronger than before. The seventh element of recovery is to address any practical consequences of the relationship. Did you lose money? Consult with a lawyer about options for recovery. Did you damage your credit? Work on repairing it. Did you lose your job or harm your career? Focus on rebuilding professionally. Did you damage important relationships? Work on repairing them where possible. These practical consequences can feel overwhelming, but addressing them systematically is empowering. Each step you take toward repairing damage is a step toward reclaiming your life. Don't let shame prevent you from taking action. What happened wasn't your fault, and you deserve to rebuild fully. The eighth element of recovery is to be patient with the process. Healing from narcissistic abuse typically takes much longer than healing from a normal breakup. There's no set timeline. For some people, significant healing happens within months. For others, it takes years. The length of time isn't an indication of weakness or failure. It reflects the depth of the manipulation and trauma you experienced. You'll have good days and bad days. You'll have periods where you feel strong and periods where you feel you're back at square one. This is normal. Healing isn't linear. What matters is the overall trajectory, not the day-to-day fluctuations. Be especially patient with yourself around dating again. Some people feel ready to date relatively soon. Others need extended time to heal before they're ready to risk vulnerability again. There's no right timeline. Honor your own readiness. Don't let anyone pressure you to date before you feel ready, and don't pressure yourself either. The ninth element of recovery is to use the experience as an opportunity for growth. This doesn't mean being grateful for the abuse or pretending it was somehow good for you. It means choosing to extract wisdom and strength from pain once you've processed the pain itself. What did this experience teach you about boundaries, about red flags, about your own vulnerabilities, about what you truly want and need in relationships, about your own resilience and strength? These lessons, as painful as they were to learn, make you wiser, more aware, and better protected going forward. Many people who heal from narcissistic abuse report that once they're through the worst of the pain, they become better at recognizing manipulation, stronger in their boundaries, more confident in their judgment, more connected to their authentic selves, and ultimately more capable of having healthy relationships than they ever were before. The growth that comes from healing can be profound. The 10th element of recovery is to eventually forgive yourself. Not him, necessarily, though some people find that forgiving their abuser is healing for themselves. But definitely forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for missing the red flags. Forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for believing his lies. Forgive yourself for losing yourself in the relationship. Forgive yourself for any mistakes you made while trying to cope with the abuse. You did the best you could with the information and resources you had at the time. You were dealing with deliberate, calculated manipulation from someone who likely had years of practice. You were dealing with powerful psychological mechanisms designed by evolution and exploited by the manipulator. You're human, and you're deserving of compassion, especially from yourself. Self-forgiveness doesn't happen all at once. It's a practice, a choice you make repeatedly until it becomes natural. Each time you catch yourself in self-blame or self-criticism, gently redirect towards self-compassion. Each time you remember something painful, remind yourself that you deserve kindness. Over time, self-forgiveness becomes easier and more automatic. We've covered a tremendous amount of information in this video, and if you're still with me, thank you. Thank you for caring enough about yourself to invest this time in learning how to protect yourself. Thank you for being willing to face difficult truths about human behavior and relationships. Thank you for taking your safety and well-being seriously. Let's recap the most important points we've discussed. Love bombing is a manipulation tactic where someone overwhelms you with excessive attention, affection, and promises to quickly create emotional dependency. It's the first phase of a cycle of abuse that includes idealization, devaluation, and often discard. Love bombers exploit normal human needs for connection and validation, along with specific vulnerabilities that many older women experience. The signs of love bombing include premature declarations of love, overwhelming communication, excessive gifts and grand gestures, unrealistic idealization, pressure for rapid relationship escalation, mirroring, isolation disguised as devotion, inconsistency between words and actions, cycling back to love bombing after conflicts, and concerning relationship histories. Love bombing is particularly effective because of psychological mechanisms, including dopamine addiction, oxytocin bonding, cognitive dissonance, the sunken cost fallacy, trauma bonding, identity disruption, manufactured dependency, fantasy bonds, strategic vulnerability, and the contrast effect. Distinguishing love bombing from genuine romantic interest requires paying attention to respect for boundaries, interest in the real you versus an idealized fantasy, consistency versus performance, reciprocity, handling of conflict, integration versus isolation, patience versus urgency, how the relationship affects your sense of self, transparency, and how he speaks about past relationships. Protecting yourself requires deliberately slowing down new relationships, maintaining independence, paying attention to actions over words, trusting your intuition, observing how he treats others, maintaining financial independence, investing in personal growth, listening to loved ones' concerns, educating yourself about manipulation, and being willing to walk away when necessary. If you've been victimized by love bombing, recovery is possible but requires acknowledging the trauma, maintaining no contact, seeking professional support, allowing yourself to grieve, resisting the urge to seek closure from him, rebuilding your sense of self, addressing practical consequences, being patient with the process, using the experience for growth, and forgiving yourself. I want to speak directly now to anyone watching who recognizes themselves in the patterns we've discussed, who realizes they might be in a relationship with a love bomber, or who is healing from a past narcissistic relationship. You are not alone. What happened to you, or what is happening to you, is not your fault. You are not weak, stupid, or broken. You were targeted by someone who exploited your best qualities. Your capacity for love, your desire for connection, your willingness to give someone a chance, your compassion, and your hope. The shame you might feel is misplaced. The shame belongs to the person who manipulated you, not to you for being manipulated. You deserve better. You deserve genuine love, respect, honesty, and partnership. You deserve to feel safe, valued, and free to be yourself in a relationship. You deserve to trust and be trusted. You deserve to have your boundaries respected and your needs considered. You deserve a partner who builds you up rather than tearing you down. If you're in a relationship that feels wrong, that makes you feel small, that requires you to constantly walk on eggshells, that leaves you anxious and depleted, that isolates you from loved ones, or that involves cycles of intensity followed by coldness, please seriously consider whether this relationship is serving your highest good. Please reach out for support. Please talk to a therapist. Please reconnect with friends and family who have expressed concerns. Please educate yourself about narcissistic abuse. And please know that leaving is always an option, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. If you've left a narcissistic relationship, if you're in the painful process of healing, please be patient and compassionate with yourself. What you're experiencing is normal. The grief, the confusion, the anger, the moments where you miss him despite knowing better, and the difficulty trusting again, all of it is normal and valid. Healing takes time, but it does happen. You will feel like yourself again. You will trust yourself again. You will be able to open your heart again. You will find genuine love again, if that's what you desire. This experience does not define you or determine your future. For those watching who haven't experienced love bombing but want to support someone who has, thank you for educating yourself. The most helpful things you can do are to listen without judgment, validate their experience, avoid asking why they stayed or what they saw in the person, encourage professional support, be patient with their healing process, help them maintain no contact, remind them of their strengths and worth, and simply be present. To everyone watching, whether you're currently in a healthy relationship, single and dating, healing from past manipulation, or somewhere else on your journey, I hope this video has provided you with valuable information and tools. The dating world can be challenging, especially for women who are re-entering it later in life, but you are strong, worthy, and capable of creating the life and relationships you truly want. Before we close, I want to ask you one more time for your support. If this video provided value to you, if it taught you something important, if it might help protect you or someone you know, please hit that like button. Your likes tell the algorithm to show this content to more women who need it. Please drop a comment sharing your thoughts, your experiences if you feel comfortable, or your questions. I read every comment, and I'm here to support you however I can. Please share this video with any friends who are dating, especially older women who might be vulnerable to manipulation. You could literally save someone from months or years of pain by sharing this information. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We regularly post content about relationship psychology, dating in midlife and beyond, recognizing manipulation, building self-worth, and creating fulfilling lives. This channel exists to educate and empower you. And finally, if you believe in the mission of this channel, if you want to support the work of creating educational content that protects and empowers women, please consider supporting us with a super thanks. Every bit of support allows us to continue doing this important work and reaching more women who need this information. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in yourself. Thank you for taking your well-being seriously. You deserve love, respect, safety, and happiness in your relationships. Never settle for less. Trust yourself, protect yourself, and remember that your worth is inherent, not dependent on any relationship or any person's validation. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. And remember, you are stronger than you know, more resilient than you realize, and absolutely deserving of genuine love and respect. Until next time, this is your reminder that you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are never alone.